No intro this time either, let's just get into it. You've heard of spell blades, but have you heard of spell shields? Because this is exactly what we're doing today. Here's my spell shield build. As you might guess, this build is all about being a battle mage. But our main weapon is a shield, and we're also using Malenia's Great Rune to heal damage that is dealt to us. Our shield of choice is the Carian Thrusting Shield. Thrusting shields are shields that also double as melee weapons, presenting a beautiful balance between offense and defense. The way it works is that you get blocking frames at the end of every light attack, and you can extend the blocking frames by waiting a little before inputting your next light attack. And so, you can basically time the block window between your light attacks to an enemy attack, and then input the next light attack in the combo. This will save you from a few attacks by default, but it also has a very high skill ceiling. Heavy attacks also get block frames, but they get them during the charge up window. Running attacks, jumping attacks, and even guard counters don't miss out on this feature either. I'm sure you can see the potential here. It basically means that if you're playing correctly, you never have to stop attacking. And there are two ways the devs try to balance this. First is obvious, which is stamina consumption. You need to play smart or the enemies will break your guard. The other way is chip damage. Neither of the thrusting shields have 100% physical damage negation, which means that every attack will deal a little bit of damage to us if we block it. And shields in general get chip damage with all elemental attacks. And the way I thought I'd deal with this at first was to combine two items. First is the Deflecting Heart Tear, which would make it so that timing our blocks would negate all physical damage and most elemental damage. And the second item was Immutable Shield, which was a spell that would make it so that you take no chip damage from elemental attacks. But this playstyle had two problems. First is the fact that the Deflecting Heart Tear only worked on dedicated blocks, and by that I mean blocks that you do with the block button. And that made it so that you are discouraged from using the unique properties of this weapon. And the second problem was the fact that Immutable Shield had a very long casting animation, and would only last 30 seconds. Which is just miserable, man, like, why is this so bad? And so my solution to this was to discard the Immutable Shield and replace it with a Scholar's Shield, which does add physical and magic damage negation, while also making it so that we take less stamina damage. And then we add our third item that we mentioned, which is Malenia's Great Rune. Malenia's Great Rune gives us time to recover lost health by attacking an enemy. Players are usually discouraged from using it, because the window to recover health only lasts 1.5 seconds. Going for the heal in that time can easily go wrong for you. There's a good chance that you will get hit, and even if you do manage to get a couple of hits in, you might not heal as much health as you'd like. But this is exactly why the rune is actually perfect for us. And that's because we'll be mostly healing chip damage. And most chip damage will be healed by like one hit or two. And so we can take full advantage of the Thrusting Shields moveset, while taking very little damage. One thing I didn't mention about Thrusting Shields is that you can attack with them while blocking. And you can see how well this synergizes with our setup. You can continue attacking while blocking incoming hits, and also healing in the process. My favorite way to use this is to use it against an enemy's long combo. And this basically turns that combo against them, because you keep attacking during it without losing much health at all. For what talismans to use, we're using the consecutive attack talismans. And these work very well for this build, because we basically never stop attacking. I'm also using the Blade of Mercy to get 20% more damage after a reboast. Finally, we have the Viridian Amber Medallion plus 3, because this is a very stamina hungry build. I also like to use a Pickled Turtleneck before a fight to get higher stamina regeneration. I'm also using the Magic Shard and Cracked Tear for more magic damage. At our intelligence level, the best staff to use is the Academic Glintstone staff, and for what spells to use, I like using Magic Blend Blade before a fight to get some good damage and stance damage in. I also use Night Comet to deal damage from a distance and maintain stance damage. Finally, the weapon art I use is Glowing Blade Phalanx. I like this a lot because we're basically using the shield to cast it, which fits the theme that we are going for. It also deals more poise damage than the spell version, and we even get a follow-up melee attack to close in the distance. And so this Ashifor is a very good match for this build in my opinion. For the look, I use the Carian Knight Helmet, Relana's Armor, Relana's Greaves, and the Carian Knight Gauntlets. This is my favorite thrusting shield build. We make full use of the weapon, and we have tons of versatility to play how we want. Next, we have my Vagabond build. The Vagabond forgoes any use of magic. No Golden Vow, no Flame Grant Me Strength, none of that. Instead, we use other things that we find on our journey to give us an advantage. Elden Ring's crafting system is not super deep or anything, but it's good at giving us offensive options and buffs to make our character stronger. There's a huge scarcity problem with it, but that's why this build rewards exploration. It's simple, you do more exploration, you get more items to make your character stronger, but you don't have to farm anything. The Vagabond is more than strong enough to take on the whole game without ever touching crafting. But the use of it gives us that edge that makes this build that much more powerful. Our weapon of choice is the Heavy Broadsword. This is the highest damaging straight sword in the game. It scales best with strength, and two-handing it gives us a huge damage bonus. A bonus that is boosted even further with the use of the two-handed talisman. Our Ash 4th choice is Square Off, which might look basic, but it is one of the best Ashes of 4 in the game. You hold your sword in a stance where you can either follow up with a fast upward slash that does good damage and can also break enemy guards, or a running heavy thrust attack that deals massive damage. Both of these attacks deal some very good stance damage and cost very little FP. We are boosting that damage even further with the use of Renana's cameo, which gives us a huge 45% damage buff when we hold the stance for more than 1 second. For what other talismans to use, you could take this build in any direction you want, but for me personally, I love deflecting with the deflecting heart here, so I'm using the curved sword talisman for more guard counter damage, and the Blade of Mercy for a 20% damage buff when we riposte an enemy. The fact that we have our broadsword be infused with heavy means that we can use these buffs to buff our weapon with various elements to take advantage of enemy weaknesses. For example, Gaius here is very weak to Holy damage, and we use it to bring him down faster. Drawstring greases are types of grease that can be used very quickly while walking or running, and they deal much more damage than the regular greases, but they last much less. It used to be that these were very hard to craft, because they needed string, and string was super rare in the lands between for some reason. You can now just buy it in the DLC though. Now let's go over food. Most foods that you eat, with some exceptions, give you a type of buff called the body buff, and you can only have one active body buff at a time. There are 3 items from this category that I like to use. First is boiled crab, which gives you a 20% physical damage negation. You don't even need to craft this one, you just buy it.
Marika's tip.
Exalted flesh will give you a 20% physical damage buff, and most damage we deal is physical, so this is good for us. Blood boil aromatic gives you an even bigger 30% physical damage buff, and even a 20% increase in stamina, but it makes you take 25% more damage, so be careful when using it. Now let's go over the exceptions I mentioned. Pickled turtleneck and well-pickled turtleneck boost your stamina recovery. These will not stack with each other, but they will stack with other body buffs. These items increase rune gain and item discovery, and they stack with everything. There is no reason not to use them. Another type of buff is aura buffs, and again, these will stack with other types of buffs, but not with each other. You only really have one option worth considering, and that is to slap Golden Vow on a dagger, and use it for more damage and defense. You could use the item version, but honestly, I just wouldn't bother. This is the look I went for, using the Mesmer Soldier armor, the Godric Soldier gauntlets, and the Vulgar Militia greaves. This build is a bit more simplistic, but I do enjoy it a lot. Finally, we have my favorite build, which is the Carian Fencer. This build is all about dual-wielding fast thrusting weapons while incorporating barriers and spells into our combos. We build up power through consecutive attacks and riposts, and then unleash that power through powerful spells. If you haven't yet gotten the memo, let me spell it out for you. Get it? Spell it out? I like deep and complex playstyles. I'm never content just relying on one weapon art or something like that. I'm not the most skilled player, not even close really, but I really appreciate just how high the ceiling is for skill expression in this game, and in that sense, it's very, very hard to top this build. Our weapons of choice are the Carian Sorcery Sword and the Mangosh Dagger, and we're actually able to dual wield these together like if they were both thrusting swords. The Carian Sorcery Sword is a thrusting sword, capable of casting spells with its heavy attack, and the possibilities when using this are just insane. You have access to a huge catalog of sorceries that you can incorporate into your combos. You could use melee attacks as combo starters or combo finishers, you could use projectile attacks to deal damage from a distance, maintain stance damage, or clear multiple enemies at once. Or you could even use some of the most powerful show-stopping spells, with some caveats for these ones. The Carian Sorcery Sword is obviously not the best catalyst for casting spells, but the versatility it offers by being its own melee weapon can't be understated. Our other weapon, the Mangosh, is a dagger that can be dual wielded with thrusting swords. We're using it as a parry tool. The main game had something similar going on with the Wakizachi, which was a dagger that could be dual wielded with full-sized katanas. It had the same function of acting as a parrying tool, while giving you access to the bar stancing moveset of the katanas. But the obvious problem with it was the fact that it would always have less range and damage than a regular katana. The Mangosh, though, does not have that problem. And that's because the bar stancing moveset for thrusting swords completely prioritizes the right-handed weapon for some reason. It's almost like it was designed with this weapon in mind, which is weird because this is a DLC weapon. This of course sucks for anyone that actually wants to use 2 thrusting swords, but it's perfect for us. We get access to this very quick moveset without any drawbacks. Now here's a fun story. The way I came up with this build is that while checking the wiki for this weapon, I found quite a few comments saying that this has as many parrying frames as the buckler, or even more in one instance. I was dumbfounded. Thinking that this has a parrying window as small as the other daggers was why I never used it to begin with. But now with the knowledge that this weapon has as many parrying frames as one of the best parrying tools in the game, made it so that I just couldn't resist using it. And so I tried it. And they were right. although I had never used parries too much. Parrying with this felt very intuitive and very rewarding. It felt like this entire new world of possibilities was now open to me. Parrying enemies and bosses became second nature to me. And well, of course it turned out that they were wrong. When testing it, just to make sure, it turned out that I was right all along. This has the same parrying frames as any other dagger. But these stupid comments gaslit me into getting good with parrying. And I loved it. And you should try it too. For talismans, we use both consecutive attack talismans to boost our damage. And the best thing about these is that although most spells can't proc the effect from them, they are boosted by them. And so we can build up damage buffs using our melee attacks and use them to get more damage on our next spell. I also used the Graven Mask Talisman for more sorcery damage, and the Blade of Mercy, which gives us a 20% damage bonus on a repost. For what spells to use, Carrion Slicer is a very obvious option, and it will be your bread and butter. I like to use this as either a combo starter or a combo finisher. For example, if you're going for a running attack, casting this is much better than using your weapons for it, and you can continue with your combo afterwards. As a combo ender, I use it after the first attack or the second one, and it is shorter than going for the next attack in the combo, so you get just a little bit more damage in before backing out. You could also use it to dish out tons of damage during a long opening. Did I mention that this is one of the only spells that proc the consecutive attack talismans? Because it is, and it's not the only one. Another spell that does that is the Gavel of Haima. This is a stronger but slower spell that you can use for bigger openings. Another spell that does that is Carrion Piercer, which does some pretty good damage and stance damage from a distance. These spells can also be used to widen your melee moveset, but these are the ones I'm using. Other spells I like to use are the Magic Blade Blade and Great Blade Phalanx to get some good damage and stance damage at the beginning of the fight. For Physic Tears, I like to use the Magic Shrouded Crack Tear for more magic damage, and the Thorny Crack Tear is an obvious second choice. But I've been experimenting a lot with the Cerulean Stabbing Crack Tear, which restores 5 FP on every melee hit. We don't exactly have the biggest FP bar, and so this is actually very useful for us. It contributes to the gameplay loop of us maybe casting a few spells at the beginning of a fight, regaining FP and building on power by fighting in melee, and then casting spells again, without ever breaking our momentum by drinking a flask. I mean, look at this moment where I run out of FP, do a melee combo to get more FP, and finished up the combo with a Carrion Slicer. Pretty cool, I think. Did I mention that Carrion Slicer can itself recover FP through this? And it costs 4 FP, meaning that it's not just self-sustaining, but it actually recovers you 1 FP per cast. Of course, there's a caveat, and it is that this physic doesn't last 3 minutes like the rest of them. It only lasts 45 seconds, but it's still a very great boost for us. For the look, I have the altered version of the Carrion Knight armor, the Carrion Knight gauntlets, and Erlana's greaves. This is my favorite build so far, and it's not even close. Hey everyone, I hope you liked this video. If you did, then please like, share, subscribe, do the YouTube thing. This is the 5th video in this series, and all the previous videos will be linked in the description below. Now tell me which build was your favorite. Let me know if you want more videos like this, and bye!